Man, I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to make it up this mountain. I mean, it's just so steep and I keep sliding back down and this might just be crazy enough to work.
Raging in video games. Whether we like to admit it or not, it's something we've all done. Maybe you die in an online game in what feels like a particularly unfair fight, or maybe you get a game over on the final boss of a particularly punishing retro game. Everyone's been there. An interesting side effect of video game rage is that a lot of people, including myself, find it hilarious to watch. This has been one of the biggest contributing factors to the rise of so-called rage games online. Think Super Meat Boy, games that are specifically designed to make you angry. These types of games are the bread and butter of Australian video game designer Bennett Foddy. You might recognize him from one of his earliest and arguably most well-known ventures, QWOP, or from his latest 2019 indie game, Ape Out, but when you hear that name, there's more than likely one game that comes to mind. Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, a B game made by Foddy himself, originally commissioned by Humble Bundle and released in 2017. This game has been on my radar for a while. It's notoriously extremely difficult and frustrating, and for whatever reason, I have an affinity for games that make me miserable. In Getting Over It, you play as a man in a pot named Diogenes. Your only tool is a hammer, and your only goal is to climb a mountain. That's it. Like, literally, that's the entire game. But okay, let me be a little bit more specific. The only way to get around in Getting Over It is by swinging your hammer and taking advantage of momentum to move you wherever you want to go. You'll have to use this ability, and this ability alone, to scale the mountain before you and make it to the top. Part of what I believe makes Getting Over It so enticing to play yourself is how deceptively easy the controls look. I'm pretty sure 99% of people who've played this game first discovered it by watching someone else play it. And it's not that it looks easy when it's being played per se, but from a conceptual standpoint, it's very easy to understand movement in this game. You can hang onto ledges, use them to launch yourself into the air, and use your hammer like a pogo stick for a bit of a faux jump. Just watching them and understanding at a base level how the game is controlled, when you see people struggling so much to just use a mouse, it's not hard to see why one might have the thought, I could do that. So you pick up the game, give it a go, and quickly realize Getting Over It does not control how you think it controls. I'm honestly not qualified to talk about the controls in this game, and quite frankly, they might be beyond human comprehension. I can't really imagine a more precise input device for gaming than a mouse, and yet it just isn't that simple. The hammer never quite moves the way you expect it to. It follows your cursor, sure, but it just kind of seems to take whatever path it wants to get there. This also means that you can have one thing happen when you perform an action to the right, and then have something completely different happen when you do seemingly the same thing over on the left. And then, of course, there's... What? Is that hammer moving on its own? I'm not touching the mouse here at all. The controls just don't feel like they should. Don't get me wrong, I want to be absolutely clear that the controls here aren't bad, as some people might say, but they are deeply unintuitive, and I'm sure that adds to the feeling of frustration of that game, being the guy to stand up in a room and say, I could do that, only to fail miserably. The entire game is narrated by none other than Bennett Foddy himself, making you feel all the more beholden to your mistakes. Most people seem to hate this part of the game. Bennett constantly drops in to give you a piece of development trivia or some philosophical musings. This is actually one of my favorite parts of the game. You feel a sense of companionship as you trudge your way up the mountain, and what he has to say is usually genuinely interesting. At the beginning of the game, Bennett promises to always save your progress, even your mistakes, and it's that mechanic that makes this game one of the most punishing games I've ever played. Getting Over It has no systems, no death system, no life system, there are no cutscenes or weapon upgrades, and most importantly, there are no checkpoints. If at any point you fall, you're susceptible to fall as far as gravity and the level design would like to take you. In many cases, back to the very bottom of the mountain. As you can imagine, this is where most of the rage this game produces comes from, spending hours and hours to finally reach a certain point, only to fall all the way back down to the beginning of the game. And you better believe Mr. Foddy is there to pick you back up with some encouraging words, an inspirational quote, or even just some music to make you remember that he definitely saw you. So at this point you must be thinking to yourself, Man, he must hate this game. I have gone on record several times as saying that by far my least favorite way to punish a player in a game is loss of progress. And at first glance, loss of progress seems to kind of be the entire point of this game, my absolute worst nightmare. That's somewhat what I expected too, going in at least. But the genius of this game lies in two characteristics. One, this game is really hard. And two, this game is fair. Those 2 hours you just spent trying to get to the spot you just fell down from, you moved like 30 feet. And ordinarily, this would be a blemish on the game in and of itself. But here's the catch. This isn't Mega Man. This game is completely fair. Getting over it is a game about learning. The controls aren't intuitive and they aren't ever taught to you. The level design is extremely difficult and at times confusing. You have to learn it all. But the thing is, the learning is the progress. Climbing the mountain and getting over it is sort of like flipping a bottle or spinning a coin in place on a table. Sure, if you try for long enough, anybody can do it once, but it's not really impressive unless you can do it consistently and on demand. Just because you've gotten to a certain point in the game doesn't mean you've beaten everything before it, and at some point you will fall back down and have to do that part again. So if you just lucked your way up the first time around, well, the second time isn't going to be any easier. But you do learn, you get better, you learn the minutia of both the controls and the level design. You get faster, that's another thing. Literally 99% of this game's length is comprised exclusively of difficulty or punishment. So maybe that opening segment takes you 2 hours the first time, but before long, maybe it only takes an hour, and then 20 minutes, and then 5. It took me 9 hours to finish my first playthrough of Getting Over It. My second only took 2 hours, and by playthrough 7, I could consistently climb the mountain in under 15 minutes. And I wanted to keep playing even after so many playthroughs because the game is fun. I honestly never really found it frustrating at all. It's so upfront and honest about its intentions that it's really hard for me to get angry with it. During my first playthrough, I was driven to keep going by an urge to know what would be next. The next line of dialogue, the next area, the next challenge, the next big fall, and I'm still right now driven to keep playing by the urge to continue honing my skills, to truly, once and for all, get over it. Being such a simple game, Getting Over It only offers 3 Steam achievements. One is awarded after you beat the game for the first time, and the second is earned by beating the game twice. The third is collected once you've scaled the mountain 50 times. A task that at one point might have seemed impossible. At one point it might have seemed that getting to the top of the mountain even once was impossible. But of course, here we are. I've yet to claim that third achievement. I've beaten the game a little under 15 times in the 22 or so hours I've spent with it, and I do intend to go all the way, but I thought it'd be better to put my thoughts on the game out now with my initial experience fresh in my mind. At some point I'll probably revisit this achievement in a weekday video, but I'm going to do that at my own pace. I liked Getting Over It a lot. I absolutely loved it, actually. It was one of the most surprisingly enjoyable games I've played in quite a while. I honestly didn't even intend to be covering this game this week. I just sat down to screw around with it for a while, and before I knew it, 21.5 hours had passed. I don't really know if I can recommend Getting Over It, though. I genuinely enjoyed it a lot, but I've also never seen any other game make other people so miserable. I thought I was the certain type of person Bennett talks about in his description of the game, but fortunately, it looks like I wasn't. If you're like me, pick up this game for $7.99 on Steam. You'll have a great time with it. But if you just so happen to be the type of person this game was designed for, well, there's always YouTube. Well, that's another week and another game in the books. Did you enjoy this video? If you did, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment letting me know what you think. I'd love hearing from you. If you'd like my videos and you'd like to see more from me, consider following me on social media, all of which will be linked down below, or joining my Discord server. We have an awesome time over there, and I'd love to see you. If you'd like to go above and beyond to help out my channel, consider sharing this video or any of my other videos with anyone you think might enjoy it. It would be a huge help. And with that being said, I think that's about all I've got for you this week. As always, thanks for watching.